What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, let's install some oil catch cans on the S13. All right, guys, if you guys have been following along the channel for a while, you will know about this car. This is the S13 240SX project that I've been working on, and you would know that we are very close. We are in the final stretch, and it is time to finally install this valve cover, which if you guys haven't seen the video on how I painted this valve cover, you guys should definitely check it out. I also did this valve cover over here as well. If you haven't seen that video, I'll definitely put the link in the description so you can check it out. I think it was something pretty easy to do, and I think it turned out really good. So yeah, definitely put that link in the description below if you want to check out that video. But like I said, in today's video, we are going to be installing these two catch cans on the S13 along with the valve cover. So if you're familiar with SRs or engines, anything high performance in general, you would know that crankcase pressure or blow-by oil vapors, that is something you can't really avoid. You know, generally on newer cars, or in this case, a newly built engine, everything should be pretty good. We shouldn't have too much blow-by. But in the end, as you start pushing more power, more horsepower, more pressure in the combustion chamber of the engine, it's kind of inevitable to lose some of that combustion, to go past the rings and get into essentially the crankcase of the engine. And it usually comes out of ports like this, or the PCV over there in the valve cover. So that is the reason why we have catch cans, and that is to try to catch some of those oil vapors. Obviously, any combustion or pressure that gets past the combustion chamber into the engine, that has unburnt fuel, oil vapor. If you're running E85, it will have E85 in it as well. And that's not something you want to put back into the engine to burn. I mean, that is what usually happens for manufacturers, is these ports will go back into the intake, manifold, or in this case, back into the turbo, to burn off those vapors or anything that was not burned before. But that usually leads to, you know, if you've ever seen oil in your intercooler piping, or oil in your, you know, in your intake manifold, that's usually a case of blow-by. And that is usually what causes a lot of carbon buildup. You'll see if you take an engine apart, your intake valves generally will be very gunky and black with stuff like that if you've had blow-by issues. But yeah, so we are going to be installing these two oil catch cans basically to try to catch any of those oil vapors or anything, and just try to have the cleanest air go back into the engine. Now, we could get into a debate on whether or not it should go back into the engine or if it should just be vented to atmosphere. I'm not going to do that in this video. I am just going to show you guys how I plan on installing these catch cans for my setup. If that is something we want to touch on, put it down in the comments and I'll try and make a video on that too. It's definitely something that I would explore in the future. Like, eventually I do want to build a custom catch can, maybe to go behind the strut tower, maybe even something that will drain back into the block. But yeah, not gonna overcomplicate things. we are going to jump right into installing, I guess, the valve cover first. So I am going to get the baffles resealed on this, get it ready to install. We have got some MazWorks hardware to install this valve cover. And yeah, I will not use YouTube magic. I will show you guys a little bit of the process on how to reseal the baffles. And I might actually put some baffle material in there, because I'm not sure if I want to put the factory stuff back in there. So this is what I pulled out. If you can see here, if it'll focus, there is a little sort of mesh screen that was sitting inside this valve cover, right inside this opening. So I may reinstall that, or I may put in some catch can baffling material, which is basically like steel wool. So let me cut to sealing the baffles back in this valve cover. All right, guys, so while I reinstall the baffles in the valve cover, I figured I would just go over in a little bit more detail what I was talking about previously in terms of crankcase pressure and oil blow-by. So if we're talking about engines, SRs in specific, it's generally unavoidable. You are going to have some level of blow-by, whether it is very little or whether it is a lot or excessive. You're going to have blow-by. You're going to have crankcase pressure. It is something that just happens. So what is it really? It is simply the escape of combustion gases from the combustion chamber, escaping past your piston rings and into your engine block. And because your engine block is all connected into the head under your valve cover, you've got your front timing cover here. If it enters into your block, it's entering into your head and thus creating positive crankcase pressure. And that is what essentially blow-by is. And to alleviate that problem, I am installing the 2 oil catch cans that I showed, and I just wanted to go over how a stock PCV system or catch can air oil separator is set up from factory from Nissan. So here I am going to show you guys with our trusty little SR drawing here. This is the factory routing on the SR20. You've got your PCV here, positive crankcase ventilation. This is essentially just a check valve, a one-way check valve. It allows air to escape from the valve cover and enter the intake manifold, but it doesn't allow air to re-enter the valve cover. So that means under conditions like idling and the engine is pulling vacuum, it will pull crankcase pressures out of the valve cover into the intake manifold, into the intake ports to reburn any unburnt fuel or those oil vapors in the combustion chamber. Now, that is a good thing and a bad thing. It is good in a sense that you are recirculating these unburnt fuels and oil vapors instead of venting it to the atmosphere. Now, I know if we're car people, we're not going to care too much about the environment, but the government cares about the environment, and that is why we have emissions, and that is why this is good, because we won't get hassled this way. Now, the bad side here is all those oil vapors, unburned fuel that's re-entering the engine, that is going to affect your air-fuel mixture. Oil obviously is not gasoline, so it is going to hinder the octane level of your air fuel, and that will hinder performance. Another bad thing is that re-entering the intake ports here, it will also create a lot of gunk. So that oil and unburned fuel creates carbon. And if you've ever seen an engine disassembled, like I mentioned, a lot of the times the intake ports can be very black and gunky, and that is from the blow-by, vapors, fumes re-entering and dirtying up the intake ports. Now, for the sake of explaining, we'll call this the cold side and this the hot side. The cold side, we've pretty much got that covered. As for the hot side, from factory, you have this T-fitting. You'll have a hose going from there into this metal box or can. That is Nissan's factory air oil separator. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail as to what a air oil separator and a catch can is, but the simplest way to explain it would be a air oil separator separates air and oil, and it allows the oil to drain back into the engine block. A catch can does the same thing, but it doesn't drain back into the block. It is something that you have to drain on your own. It is something that you have to maintain on your own, whereas a air oil separator is its own system and kind of maintains itself. Now, going to the front of this T, generally you'll have the hose come from the T and go into the intake on the turbo. Now, this is the factory way that they run it. To explain why I think this is good and why I plan on running my catch cans in the way that I'm about to show you, essentially, this hose going into the intake of the turbo is going to create vacuum or a Venturi effect. Whether you are idling or whether you are under boost, this will always be pulling air into the turbo, therefore drawing crankcase pressure out of the valve cover, out of the crankcase. And that is what we call creating negative crankcase pressure. Now, I think this has its advantages, and this is why I want to do it this way. And it's likely why your SR20 comes this way from factory. One of the big things to me is that negative crankcase pressure will improve piston ring seals as well as prevent oil leaks. If you have positive crankcase pressures, you'll want to push seals out. You'll want to push oil. It's pressurizing your crankcase, literally. So by having a negative crankcase pressure, I think the engine will just run more efficiently and seal better overall. Now, I'm going to go into how I plan on installing my catch cans, and first I will delete the PCV valve, so that's gone. But what I'll be replacing it with is still a one-way check valve. It's just going to be AN fittings that will allow me to adapt AN hoses to the catch can. So we've got our two catch cans here. So one for the cold side, one for the hot side. I'm first going to go over the cold side. So we are going to go from the catch can to the PCV. Now, like I said, there will be a one-way check valve here. So it is the same as factory, except we're going into a catch can before we go back into the intake manifold. Now, on the cold side, we are going to go from the catch can into the valve cover right here. And obviously, we're going to go from the valve cover back into the drain in the block. So these blue lines will represent paths that may have oil vapor in them or blow-by in them. We'll call this dirty air. So as you can see, they both enter the catch cans, and obviously the catch cans that I have, you don't need to have really fancy catch cans. I think the most important thing is that they are baffled, that they can hold a decent capacity. Obviously the ones that I am using are a little small, but I think it should be fine for now until I need to upgrade to bigger catch cans. But the key benefit in the catch cans that I have are they are baffled and they are filtered. So obviously you want a baffled catch can because you want these vapors to enter the catch can, hit a wall or hit a baffle, and that's what's actually going to separate the oil from the air. The oil will drip down into the catch can and catch it at the bottom, while the air will be able to exit. And this is where both of these catch cans are filtered. So I'm hoping the air coming out of them will be as clean as possible. Obviously, it's not going to be clean, fresh air, but it'll definitely be cleaner than if you didn't have a filter. So that is where these lines come into play. The green is going to represent the cleaner air or the clean air. So same as factory, it's going from the catch can on the cold side back into the intake manifold, and the catch can on the hot side back into the intake of the turbo. And that pretty much sums up how I plan on running this setup. Hopefully that's clear to you guys, and hopefully by now I'm done reinstalling the baffles in the valve cover. So let's get back to it. Valve cover is ready to go in. So I've got the baffles all reinstalled. All the bolts are Loctited with red thread locker. And yeah, I also put in the factory drain here. Everything's gasketed like how it was from factory, because it does need to be sealed in order to pull vapors through the channels of the valve cover. So I did put the factory sort of mesh back in there as well. You probably can't see, but yeah, pretty much we are ready to put this valve cover finally on the engine. So I have to pull out the coil packs, and then we'll be able to install this valve cover. So I am going to cut to that as well, because I'm sure nobody really wants to see a valve cover install. You just want to see the results. So let's jump to that. Our valve cover is installed. So the next step now is going to be installing our fitting into here to replace the PCV. And I figure we might as well connect from the back of this breather down to the drain that goes into the engine block. So that should be pretty straightforward. So I'm not really going to show it. We'll just use a little YouTube magic to speed it along. There we go. We've got our AN line made that goes into the breather, and then we've got our fitting here. So this is a -8 to 3/8 NPT fitting that I've threaded in here. It's a 45 degree. So now I'll be able to install our check valve, which is basically what the PCV was. So this is just gonna go on to here like this, and then we'll make our line going to our catch can. So let me get this installed, and we will plumb the lines to our first catch can. All right, so here we have our catch can that we're going to be using on, we'll call it the cold side, since that's the side that the intake manifold is on. And this is just a generic catch can I got off of Amazon. Really, I just wanted it because it is small enough to fit where I want to put it, which is roughly around the strut tower, and it is baffled. It does have a brass filter, and it has a dipstick for me to check. So it kind of checks all the boxes aside from it being able to hold a decent capacity, and it also doesn't have a drain, which isn't great, but I think this was like 50 bucks on Amazon. So I can't really complain, and like I said before, I probably will revise this oil catch can system later on in the future. It's just I want to get this plumbed up for now. And what we are going to do is we're going to put our, this is a -8 fitting to M16 by 1.5. So these are going to go into our oil catch can. And this is going to allow us to run AN lines to it, basically. So I'm going to get this situated in the engine bay, and we'll be able to plumb our lines to it. All right, so I ended up mounting the catch can right here behind and was able to get the lines made as well. So basically, to explain what we have going on here, we have coming out of the valve cover through the check valve, going down through the intake manifold. That goes into the in of the oil catch can, and it should catch all the oil vapors and all that. And then going through the bronze filter, coming out is this line going into the back of the intake manifold. So that means that this side of our PCV system is complete, and now we can move on to the last part, which is just connecting a hose to this port and then connecting that to our other catch can, and then going from there to the filter. So let's get the other catch can mounted, which I'm going to mount right here, and then we can plumb up those lines as well. All right, so got the second catch can mounted, and I was able to plumb the line coming from the valve cover going into the catch can. And now the only line we have left is the one coming out of the catch can that has to go into the intake. So what I actually did here is I decided to drill into the filter instead of this intake tube, because the fittings that I have, they wouldn't contour to the radius of the tube here. So I figured it would be better to just put it into the filter. So this might seem a little unconventional, but what I have here is a -10 90-degree swivel, and the thread on this is I believe a 1/2-inch NPT. So what I did was I took a step bit, drilled it all the way to the end here, which is 3/4, and that created the hole in the filter to be a tapered hole. So it kind of fits with the tapered shape of the NPT threads. And actually the base, if you can see here, the base is actually very thick on this filter. It is about the entire length of like this. So this is in here very securely. It was hard to thread it in actually, and I'm pretty confident in it being fine. So all I have to do is throw this filter back on, then we can plumb from the catch can into here, and that'll be pretty much it for our PCV catch can system. And there we have it. We've got the catch cans, both catch cans hooked up. PCV system is basically complete. We just have to fasten a few lines here and there. But other than that, we've got our catch can coming out of the PCV to catch any unburned fuel or oil before it enters the intake manifold. And our second catch can to catch everything that comes out from here to catch it before it re-enters the intake. So that is going to be it. And we actually have finally the green valve cover on the engine, which has been a long time coming. I think it's nice because it's kind of draws focus to the middle. Everything else is kind of black and silver and kind of neutral. It's just the green in the middle that grabs your attention. And I'm actually not sure what cover to run. I have this stock cover that I could put on temporarily for now. I might get a Tomei cover, or maybe try to get a weld cover or something like that. But in the meantime, this can sit here and kind of make it look more complete. Let me know in the comments, what do you guys think of this valve cover and the spark plug cover? Should I do something different with the Tomei or weld, or I don't know, something else? But that is it for our catch can PCV system. Another thing that we can check off the list for the S13. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Maybe some of you guys found it helpful if you are doing a catch can system on your SR. Now, this is just how I wanted to do it. I wanted to keep everything close to OEM in terms of a sealed system. I didn't want to really vent to atmosphere. Depending on where you are, that may cause problems with law enforcement, you know, because emissions, you're just venting out to atmosphere. Whereas this, at least I kept it pretty much the same, just adding catch cans in between. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys found it useful or helpful. And as always, thank you for subscribing and thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.